Hello, welcome back for Unit 4 of our course in American History from 1877 here at Waldorf Online. And this week we dive into chapters 24 and 25 of the U.S. History textbook to take a look at what's commonly called the Jazz Age or the Roaring Twenties. And then we also take a look at the Great Depression. So kind of two sides of the coin here as we look at the content this week. I think the 1920s I've always found interesting. One of my first topics I ever got really into was organized crime during the 1920s after as my parents took me to visit Al Capone's house in Chicago, and I think I got really interested in that time period. It's one of my first history true loves. In the 1920s, it's kind of interesting because coming out of the Great War, President Harding takes office, and he, in his inauguration speech, talks about a return to normalcy. And the 1920s would be anything but. We start to see massive changes in American society, both in terms of how people are living their day-to-day lives. We start to see more and more people gaining access to mobility through automobiles. We also see more people gaining access to electricity, and that redefining business in a lot of different ways. People also gain access to credit for the first time, which allows people to gain conveniences they never really dreamed of having that changed how people live their day-to-day lives. We also see prohibition during this time period, which is going to have all sorts of effects in American society. And we see the first wide-scale expansion of the stock market, which leads to our first major move towards income inequality in the country, and ultimately precipitates the onset of the Great Depression, which we're going to take a look at in the second chapter. As you kind of work through this, you've got two things this week. We'll first have our discussion board, which, as usual, you got to get your first post in with your thoughts on the question by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central, and then your response to a classmate by Tuesday at 11:59. And so as you kind of get into this, you're going to be taking a look at kind of the concepts of strategies to get out of the Great Depression. So which concept do you think was more influential by 1940? Kind of American individualism. President Herbert Hoover, who's going to take office as the Great Depression begins, is going to actually at one point in his career write a book called American Individualism. The second is going to be the deserving poor. And I want you to take a look at both these concepts. They show up in the text. And as you kind of take a look at this, I want you to think deeply about it as we were kind of considering the different perspectives last week on the discussion board. Continue to use that skill as you work through. And then as you respond to a classmate, explain whether you think the concepts were kind of conflicting or compatible during this time period from 1920 to 1940. I want you to include specific examples from the readings in both posts again. I think, again, we want to see growth with offering a detailed analysis of the text, responding to the prompt, and then also bringing evidence into your discussions with classmates as you work through. I want to avoid either or thinking by kind of weighing the information before making a decision. I think it's really important to take in different viewpoints, kind of run them against each other, and then kind of make your ideas. I think sometimes we get too caught into, especially in the modern moment, kind of looking only at information that reinforces our viewpoints. I think you can see this in how some people approach understanding politics, or I think about a lot of times as sports teams. I think like whatever teams you may follow, sometimes it's easier to look at the viewpoints that are going to reinforce what you already think about kind of how things are going. And I want you to practice that as you move through the course. This is another one of those skills that I think can benefit you well beyond kind of what we're doing as it regards to the 1920s and 1930s. And hopefully when you start to ask the questions of what is the source, who is putting it together, why they're putting it together, and why you should listen to them, I think is one of the most valuable things people can gain from historical study that translates into whatever else you're doing in life. The other thing you got to do this week is work on assessment, which, again, like our ones in Unit 1 and 2, we're going to have a couple of matching kind of questions. And then once you knock that out, you're going to work on the essay portion of that. So as you do that, make sure you're bringing evidence in, and I want you to there's a rank kind of component to this. So you're going to rank in order of greatest to least influence the creation of opportunities for marginalized groups during this time period. And so there's four different options there, and I want you to include all of them in your response. So you're going to take a look at Herbert Hoover's policies. You're going to take a look at Franklin Delano Roosevelt's policies, commonly called the New Deal, the Harlem Renaissance, which is going to be an explosion of African American culture centered in New York City during this time period, which is going to really start to influence mass culture in America, as well as the legalizations of union and changes in labor during this time period. So as you do that, make sure you're using specific examples from the reading to explain the order you're putting together, and then include an explanation for why your first and last items are positioned in that way. Make sure you're putting your best foot forward there. Make sure you're incorporating some evidence, and just do your best. If you got questions this week, make sure you're reaching out, and we'll have another great step towards successfully completing the course. Good luck.